Right, that seems to be better. G'day everyone, we'll try again. Welcome to the first episode, the glitchy first episode of Crowcast for 2025. It's pre-season, so we're allowed to have a few technical issues. But without any further ado, let's get on with it and crack straight in, shall we? G'day. Take two, Macca, take two. Welcome to everyone who has joined us. Sorry for the messing around, but as I said, it is pre-season, so we're allowed a few little glitches. Welcome, Macca, and welcome, Michael. How you going? Oh, shit, I've got you on mute. One moment, please. How are you going?
Take two. Oh, I'm quite well. And what about you, Michael?
I'm keen, mate. I'm a Hawthorn fan, so I'm very excited about this year. What can possibly happen? I mean, I think I was saying to Rob the other day on the phone that I went to, I think it was round 7, and Hawthorn played the Swans at the MCG, and I went to that, and we got absolutely towed up, and I was like, it was so horrible. I was just like, obviously I was going to watch them, but I was like, I can't watch this for another 15, 16 weeks. And then it all turned around and play the hot ball, mate. The hot ball.
I think you're talking about the wrong team, mate.
For those on YouTube that are in Discord and saying that the stream died, there's a new stream up, so I made the other one private, so you'll need to flick over to the new stream. All right, now we've got a lot to get through tonight, Mac, and of course, like I said, we've got Michael on, and I reckon, Michael, before we get into talking about the footy, we probably need to talk about why you're actually here, mate.
I'm here actually coming to Adelaide in about 2 weeks' time, actually. I'm doing a show that I've done the last 2 years at the Melbourne Comedy Festival called Michael Chamberlin's Completely Incomplete History of Australian Rules. So essentially it's the history of football. So it's in the title. So I've got about 170 years to cover in about 55 minutes. But it's been really good fun to do it the last 2 years at the Comedy Festival. So I'm bringing to the Fringe on September 8th of March, and then Sunday, the 9th of March. At Drama Llama, which is right near the world famous Rhino Room.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's actually been one of the shows. I've done many kind of comedy shows over the years, but the most fun to do, and also the most fun to write and put together, because I just kind of did a bit of research.
Yeah.
And read a lot of books. I do say at the top that I'm a comedian. I'm not a historian, so don't fact check me. But yeah, I literally cover from, I think it's 1835 through to 2024. Yeah, it's a lot of fun to do.
And what prompted you to do this, mate? What was the allure of going back and creating a show all about AFL and I guess VFL football?
Yeah. I've always had a bit of fascination with it. I think it's actually comes from my dad. My dad has been a footy fan since, like, Nick, think 1945. And so he always kind of had a bit of a knowledge about the history of things. And so I think it kind of comes from that. Like, I generally find it a challenge every now and then. I'll just be like, I'm just going to write down the final series of 1994. Kind of plot it out of who played who, and then check if I'm right. So yeah, I've always had a bit of a kind of an eye to the history. But then even finding stuff out, like there's I made, like, the inventor of the game, Tom Wills, is basically Australia's version of Forrest Gump. Like, he shows up in like 4 or 5 like rather historical occasions. Even by the fact that he went to the same school as the bloke who invented rugby. Like, it's just very weird coincidences. And then even weird things like Tom Wills. So the first ever Brownlow medalist was a guy called Edward Greaves, who played for Collingwood, known as Cargy to his mates. And Tom Wills, for a short time in the 1860s, was engaged to his grandmother. So the guy who was voted the best player of the game was Tom Wills was engaged to his grandmother. So it's just, yeah, there's just odd little coincidences that show up. Even things like the Premiership Cup, like there's a great story about the Sir Kenneth Luke was the president of the competition at the time in '56.
Yeah.
And he went over to watch the FA Cup final, and because that's why we back in the day, we say, did you win the flag? By the fact you won a flag, that's what you got. You didn't get a cup. The cup only came in 57. And he went to the FA Cup and he liked the idea that the players got a cup and they did a lap of honour. So he owned a metals factory. A weird coincidence again. He owned a metals factory, and so he got one of his workers to make a cardboard prototype of the cup.
Yeah,
and then
right.
It's still in Melbourne today. The building's still there. It's graffiti, but people would know it's in North Fitzroy. And he went to the 3rd level of his office, his workers, in a park over the road to run around holding up the cup, so he could get an idea of what it would look like as a fan to see someone run around the park in a cup.
That's amazing.
With the cup. Yeah. So there's all those type of stories. There was they had leagues in prisoner of war camps at Changi. They had a competition, like, on the weekend. They played footy, and they were particularly rough games. And they actually brought in the Changi medal. I'm taking over. I'm sorry, but they brought in essentially a Brownlow, because the games were really violent. But like 10,000 troops would show up to watch the games, and the games are really violent. And they wanted to calm them down by the fact that they were like, if there was a fight, then maybe people would run off the bench to get in the fight, and then maybe people from the crowd would get in the fight, and there were literally Japanese troops with guns, like, watching. And so they brought in the best and fairest medal. But yeah, the teams were called, Melbourne, Collingwood, Carlton, Fitzroy. The umpire was Chicken Smallhorn, who won a Brownlow.
Yeah,
Fitzroy.
yeah.
So yeah, anyway, I won't give it all away. But there's fascinating stuff with jokes. It's stand-up.
Oh, so I was going to ask you about that. It is a stand-up show, isn't it? It's not a serious sit down. So
no, it's not a lecture. No, yeah. So it's definitely comedy.
So you can't spend your whole time talking about North Melbourne. That would seem the obvious comedy. So, I mean, you got to spread the love, I guess. How do you
think about North Melbourne.
How do you wind comedy into the very serious business of VFL/AFL football?
Well, I'm very lucky by the fact, people like Tom Wills and the like. I'm telling stories that are already interesting, and that's why they've been around for 170 years. So I'm just inserting jokes into them. Actually, I find it interesting this year, actually, because Hawthorn, North Melbourne, and Footscray, well, Western Bulldogs, are having their 100th anniversary. So they came into the league in 1925, into the VFL. So I know, being a Hawthorn supporter, I've been getting a lot of emails about celebrating our 100th year and the like. But even back then, in 1925, they were going to admit Port Melbourne, but they weren't allowed to because their crowd was deemed to be too unruly.
Wow.
And then also another team that was considered was a team called the Public Service Football Club. So it would have been made up entirely of people who work for the public service, so people who work in banks and the ATO, politicians. That was one team that was considered to come in 1925. So we could have had Albo running around, nuggety halfback flanker.
Geez, you'd be queuing up just to give him a clip over the ears, wouldn't you? I know Macca would. Macca be all over that.
Bloody oath I would.
So do you get into anything other than the dirty old VFL, or is there any SANFL content?
There's a little bit. Like, I'll address the top by the fact I am very well aware that the SANFL came in at the same time as the VFA, which then then people jumped over to become the VFL. It was 1877. So yeah, I definitely have a bit of context by the fact. I remember, just growing up, and we'd probably get the SANFL Grand Final on TV. I am very well aware that Port Adelaide Magpies haven't won a flag for 25 years. When I was a child, it felt like they won the flag every year. And then also, I'm very well aware of the 1991 bloodbath between North and West Adelaide, and Steve Sims, whose head looked like
that was North and Glenelg.
By the end of the game.
Wasn't that North and Glenelg, mate? Macca?
I think it's North and West.
No, I think it was North and West.
Was it? There was one. It might have been in the 80s between North and the Base with Stephen Sims.
I know the one. Yeah, you're thinking of the Stephen Sims one.
Yeah.
That was a beauty.
Yeah, that was a ripper. Yeah. Now look, Michael. So it's 2 nights on the 8th and the 9th of March. I would imagine that for such an esteemed event, ticket sales would be just about sold out. Where can people jag one?
Flying out the door. If you go to the Adelaide Fringe website, adelaidefringe.com.au, grab a ticket. And the one thing I actually really have enjoyed doing it the last 2 years in Melbourne was that it's kind of a show for everyone. I actually even generally was not a thought in my head. But the youngest audience member I saw was 13, and the oldest I met was 83. So it's really for all ages. And there is swearing and the like, and so I do always say to the parents before they come in, just as a heads up, there is a bit of swearing. And they always say, they've heard it all before. But it really generally is and really good fun after actually meeting people, and they tell you their stories as well.
Yeah.
There was one bloke I met last year, and he said he got traded from Port to the team that Malcolm Blight coached in the SANFL. Which one would that have been?
Oh, was that
off the top of your head?
Woodville West Torrens?
Yeah, Woodville. Yeah. So he got traded from Port to Woodville. Had a falling out with Malcolm Blight within about the first 2 weeks, and so he left the club. And the bloke who replaced him at Port went to go and play in about 5 or 6 premierships. So he was like, how's my life going? Well, there was one other bloke as well who came down from the Central Coast in New South Wales. And he came down to the comedy festival. He's like, cool, I'll come down. I'll go to a few shows. I'll go and watch a few matches. And then he booked the flights, booked accommodation, booked everything. And then he was like, it's gather round. So all the footy was in Adelaide and not in Melbourne.
Well, Macca, you'd have plenty of SANFL fuel for Michael if he wanted to beef up his SANFL content, wouldn't you?
Oh, I certainly would, but I don't think we've got time for it, mate.
So, Rob, you're saying you're a surf fan. Macca, who do you follow on the SANFL?
In the SANFL, Woodville West, the Woodville West Torrens. I had a little bit of a run with West Torrens back in the day, and
cool.
And then I followed them as a supporter, and a couple of things that I've seen over the years would be very good for your repertoire, but I don't really think we've got the time to go through it all now.
Robbie Muir would be one.
Well, Robbie Muir, I actually saw that incident. With Robbie Muir.
So do you know about that one, Michael?
No, give us a scoop, man.
Uh,
I mean, I generally agree. Like, I'd have to do, a year of research, but I could definitely do like a sample edition. I could do a waffle edition. I mean, I
don't worry about Western Australia.
Yeah,
Western Australia is they're a different country.
Yeah, but, I was there that day. That was at Thebarton Oval, and Mad Dog Muir, who played for St Kilda and got reported so many times.
Oh yeah.
West Torrens recruited him. He then got the bullet and he went to Woodville, and they were playing against West Torrens and at Thebarton. And I remember seeing it was on a half forward flank, the northern half forward flank. He didn't just hit one player, he hit everybody. Through the whole game, he was just hitting players right, left and centre. And I'm seriously, probably about 5 reportable offences in the game. And he had made the crowd so irate that after the game, and I've never seen it ever happen anywhere before, there were thousands of people spilled out on the oval wanting to kill him. And he was absolutely. They tried to get around him, and anyhow, I don't know what some supporters said to him up close, but Mad Dog wanted to kill him. He was restrained by a Woodville official who he turned around and jobbed his own official, dropped him, and the person who had said the thing went through the crowd, jumped the fence, followed by Mad Dog Muir, who chased him and jumped the fence, caught him around by the northern goals and beat the living shit out of him. And then, of course, they had to escort him off and carry him and protect him because everybody wanted to kill him and he wanted to fight everybody. But it was, to me, it was one of the saddest things I've ever seen in football.
Oh, yeah, it was a complete meltdown, wasn't it, Mac?
It was because, I mean, he had thousands around him baying at him, calling him names, calling him everything, and I'm sure the Aboriginal side of it would have come into it as well. And he just snapped, his brain snapped, and it was like an animal being baited till it could not hold itself back anymore. And it was, as I said, look, Barty Magic made the same kind, very sad. And he was a great footballer, but yeah, that was the last time he played footy. Yeah, really sad.
So I was actually talking to a friend about this the other day who's not a huge footy fan, talking about how Hawthorn and Melbourne nearly merged back in '96. How did you feel when Woodville and West Torrens merged? It was where you kind of...
sad, but realistic. The SANFL really caused the situation by allowing too many teams in on the western side. Once they brought in Woodville, which really took some of the territory away from West Torrens, and they were just squeezed in between Westies and Port. I think it was just inevitable, really. And therefore, West Torrens became cellar dwellers, and when you're cellar dwellers, your finances suffer. So ultimately, it was the only thing that could really be done. I do go to Woodville West Torrens when they're in the finals, and I do barrack for them. But I don't have the same feeling that I did for the club that I played for.
Yeah, sure. No, it's actually, I was about 18 when Hawthorn and Melbourne were going to merge, and my thought at the time was that I wouldn't barrack for that team. But I was a good little boy. John Scott said if every Hawthorn supporter gave $200, so I took the $200 that I made at the bottle shop that I was working at as an 18-year-old, and went down to Hawthorn and gave it to a couple of ladies, and they were very happy for the contribution. But yeah, I mean, I've had a few Brisbane Fitzroy fans who were in the wilderness for a while and have gradually got back on. But yeah, I at that time when Hawthorn and Melbourne were going to merge, I was like, well, that's not a team I'm going to back for. Who knows what would happen, nowadays, but yeah.
Well, Michael, it's been great having you on. I would have loved to have kept you on, but because of our audio issue with the teams and the fact I've got to call someone else for our next guest,
No dramas at all.
I'm gonna have to kick you off. Can you just again repeat the venue and where people can get tickets and the dates for us, mate?
For sure. If you head to adelaidefringe.com.au, and it's Saturday, March 8th and Sunday, March 9th. So the show is about an hour, 55 minutes an hour. And literally, it's Michael Chambers' completely incomplete history of Australian rules. The topic is in the title. It's about the history of footy. And the thing I really love about it, is that, it's for all ages, but also and hearing people's stories. But there are some things that aren't intended to get a laugh, but you can see the audience and you can see their face, and they're just like, wow, like you hear people. I remember there was a big reveal I had about Tom Wills, one of the final fact I give about him, and the lady in the crowd was like, "Are you joking?" I was like, "No, it's all real, it's all true." You'll hopefully have a laugh, and you can tell some stories the next day to your mates about the story of footy. It's fascinating.
Beautiful. All right, Michael. Well, good luck with the show, and I'm sure that plenty of Crowcast fans will get along, and so we might see you there.
Great. Thanks, guys. Yeah, thanks for your help.
Good on you, mate.
See you, Michael.
See you, Macca. See you, Rob. Have fun.
Bye.
Bye, mate.
All right, Mac. Well, that was that. And I reckon that would be a very interesting show to go and see, don't you?
I think so, but I think we lost a few listeners while we were doing that.
Oh, well, that's all right. I mean, look, it is Fringe time. We are all about promoting the Fringe. Michael was good enough to reach out to us to come on board, and the glitches probably didn't help, but now we can get along and talk about the footy. And sorry, go on.
I was going to say, and we've got something good to talk about.
We definitely have got something good to talk about, mate. So while we get our mate BIGMAN along, how about Macca, we just quickly run through the results of the match sims that have been played around Australia over the last few days, and just catch up. Not that they really mean anything, but how about we just do that, and then we'll talk about Adelaide and Port and Adelaide in general.
Yeah, happy to do that.
All right. So far, it's look. I mean, you can't get a lot out of these things. And before we go on, just a reminder to people that, of course, this is Crowcast, Mac. So people in the studio audience can come on and have their say. And if you want to do so, if you are in the Discord studio audience and you want to have your say, stick your hand up and I will definitely get you on. All right. So first of all, we had the Indigenous All-Stars match versus Freo. Did you catch that one, Mac?
Oh, yeah, I did. I thought it was a rip of a game to watch. Absolutely.
It was a lot of fun, wasn't it?
It was. Played a very good spirit. But the Indigenous boys, by God, they've got some natural talent, haven't they?
Yeah.
Bloody freaks.
Oh, yeah.
Actually.
Yeah. Half the time they looked like they were doing it on the bit.
Yeah. It was an exhibition.
Yeah. And look, by the same token, I felt like it wasn't played like an exhibition. I felt like blokes went when they had to go. There was some good clashes and some good efforts, and I felt like it was definitely a fun game to watch.
Yeah, no, I thoroughly enjoyed it because, as I said, they've got such natural ability.
Yeah. Look, and the best thing to come out of the game as far as I was concerned was that Isaac Rankin didn't get injured. He had a lazy 20-odd touches, sort of nipped in and out of the game, did what he had to do, but I was quite happy for Isaac just to look after that hamstring. Don't go on too many big sprints, Isaac, and just ease into it.
100%, absolutely. I was doing the same thing, Feen. I was happy if the ball never came near him.
Yeah.
But he still picked up a lazy 21 possessions, I think it was. And,
20-odd touches.
And I think he cruised anyhow. I think. I don't reckon he was 100% flat out.
Yeah. Now, so Freo obviously didn't have a match sim over the course of the last week, obviously, because they played against the All-Stars. But we did have a few games. We had Essendon defeating the Bulldogs by 19 odd points. West Coast getting up over Richmond. Richmond fans, I think, may as well book their holidays because it's not going to be a good season for Richmond, I don't think. Geelong got up over Hawthorn. Brisbane, Collingwood and Gold Coast had a bit of a three-way going up there at People's Choice Stadium. Brisbane won the first encounter against Collingwood. Gold Coast then won the next two, one against Brisbane and one against Collingwood. So Gold Coast just making sure that the bookies get their early season money for the Gold Coast before they fall in a bloody heap again like they always do.
Yep. Makes them rich.
Yeah, that's right. And then Sydney defeated GWS. I thought Sydney looked pretty good, actually. St Kilda and Carlton had a pretty dour match. And today Melbourne and North played out about a 40-odd point win, 46-point win to Melbourne. Obviously, nothing much to take from these games. But, there's some good young lads. I guess the story out of it all is the terrible luck of young Jagger Smith, who did his ACL today, Mac.
Absolute shocker, yeah. We probably dodged the bullet that Carlton was so keen on because we were very keen on him as well. And I think that if he'd been available, I think we would have taken him. But whether maybe the not. Case or not, well, we actually made those type of noises, and maybe that was to make sure that somebody did take Jagger Smith, so that we were okay to get our lad, and that might be the book.
Sorry.
Yeah, well, I don't think it needed music. It wasn't that good. But yeah, no, it's really sad. I mean, he's going to miss his. Been drafted number 3. And, you expect to have it, and he is a good player. And if you expect he would have played, and he would have, I think, done well. But poor lad, now he's got to heal and then to set it up for the whole year and have a crack next year.
Look, it's just such a shame, and you don't want to see a lad in his rookie season, first game out, to his ACL like that. Terrible. You wouldn't wish it on your worst enemy, to be honest with you. I felt so sad for him, and hopefully his youth assists in his recovery, and hopefully it's something that he can make a full recovery from, because, of course, one of his strengths was his lateral movement and his agility, and
yes.
That was his one wood, his ability to create space and get separation. And you always wonder, I mean, we'll talk about Wayne Miller a bit later on, but you always wonder with blokes like that whether they can come back. So Carlton will be keeping their fingers crossed. But I think everyone in footy will be keeping their fingers crossed that he makes a full recovery.
Yeah, I totally endorse that. Hope he does.
All right, Mac, I'm going to test out my technology again and see if I can give young BIGMAN a call and see what we can do there. Just bear with me a second. Hello. Hello, how you going, mate?
Good, thanks, Feenix. Yourself?
Good. Mate, we're having a lot of fun here.
I've a few technical issues to start off with. That's all right, mate.
Look, it's fine. It's fine. First game of the season for us as well, and there was a bit of rust. And a bit of dust, a few cobwebs, but we got there. And look, it's great to have you come on, mate. For those who don't know, BIGMAN is part of the big footy scene, and he gets along to just about every training. How many did you miss, mate? 2 or 3?
Oh, I reckon it was tops 2, I reckon. And there was one, and I was actually driving around half of Adelaide just trying to find it. It turned out to be Westminster College or something. So I there's no chance I was figuring that one out. So, but apart from that, yeah, I think I got to them all too. And I'll tell you what, there's been some pretty hot days there, but no, it's been worth it. It's been great.
Yeah, no, look, and the reports that you've provided on Big Footy are just fantastic, and I know
thanks.
that everyone appreciates them, and hence I thought I'd reach out to you and see if you wanted to come on, and you've been good enough to do so. So we've just gone through the results of the other teams, and just before we get into the results of the Port match, Sim, if you were to sum up the Crows pre-season in a nice little concise elevator pitch, how would you sum it up?
I'll try and make it concise. It's not usually the way I operate, but look, I think every preseason, your team's going to look good. It's just how it is. You always feel optimistic about what you're seeing, but I think what I've seen this summer has been first and foremost, we look quick. We look really quick out there, and we look. I think another thing that's come to mind is just, with the addition of the guys we got in the trade period and the draft period, of course, as well, how much that core group has strengthened up to the point where, fringe players that were this time last year, we were talking about Berry and Jones and Butts and guys like that who haven't done anything wrong, don't get me wrong, but we're probably talking about them as being in the mix for round one. This year, I don't think we're saying that. I think we're talking those guys have sort of been pushed out. Stronger players have come back, come into the side. And, in some ways, it's actually been easier to pick the 22 this year because I think that there's got more good players, and those players have they've sort of picked themselves. Whereas the last few years, it's been harder to sort of separate players. Whereas now I'm like, nah, these guys are in, and there's probably only about a couple of spots where I'm like umming and ahhing over.
100%. I totally agree with that.
Mm.
And I'd imagine, like, judging by who they've trotted out in the internal trial and the A's and in the first three quarters of the sim on Friday, a couple of blokes been shuffled back, and a couple of blokes, I reckon, probably playing for their careers. But blokes like Sam Berry, I guess, and Harry Schoenberg, and even Wayne Miller in the ones on Friday night. And Chase Jones would be another. They're the sort of blokes that you feel like with the additions are just now back in the pack a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a bad thing. Like, those guys can play AFL footy. We know that. They've shown it. How good they are, is if we do get a few injuries, and fingers crossed we don't, but injuries do happen. If those are the next guys in, I think that's not a bad result. It's the fact that those guys aren't really in our best 22 to start the year, which is a positive because we brought in guys that are just simply better players, and as a result, we have a better team. So, look, in terms of, I think our depth is not only really strong now, but also our higher end talent is really starting to grow now through the draft and also last year's trade period.
Yeah. So everyone's talking about Jake Saligo. Would he be your standout, and are there any others that would be standouts, just in terms of the form on the track?
Well, he's in terms of the summer, he's definitely been up there. I think I did like a top 12 or so, and he was I think it was 5th from memory. And in terms of the last couple of games, the game in Port Pirie and also the game at Mount Barker on Friday night, I mean, he stood out. I think he wasted a three Brownlow vote game in a trial match, unfortunately. You can't play much better than he did. And look, at the start of the summer, I said I think they were trying to ease him in. I don't know if he had like the hardest off season. I think because of his groin issues that he must have had last year. But as this preseason progressed, I could really see him running on top of the ground, and he's really hit his straps basically since the Christmas break. And look, he was training so well last preseason before he hurt his ankle. And it took a little while for him to get going. And then I think we saw his quality. He started to really break out. Probably fell away a bit in the second half of the year because of those groin issues. But look, he's flying now. And I hope we use him right, because I think he's a natural contested play. He's a clearance beast. He's so clean and tight and clever. I think he's going to get shuffled around a little bit. Hopefully not too much, but geez, he's pretty good, isn't he? And, pick 36 or whatever we pay for him, it looks like absolute steal. He's a star.
I remember in the Hamish interview that I did a couple of years ago when Jake got picked up, and he was talking about Soligo and Zach Taylor, and Zach Taylor was actually taken ahead of Jake Soligo. But Hamish was a real fan, and I think they expected him not to be available. I think that they thought that Richmond were going to, I think it was Richmond, were going to jump all over him. And as you say, the fact that he got down to the mid-30s was just a bargain for us. And look, Adelaide have for so long had a stodgy midfield with the old formula Macca of your inside grunt with Matty Crouch and a bit of inside out with Rory Laird and all the rest of it. But Mac, to me, without going too far into what happened on Friday night, to me we've got a couple of hardball winners that can also take advantage on the outside in Soligo and also Peatling. How do you see that?
Well, you noticing me or BIGMAN?
No, you, mate.
No, well, I actually thought that Crouch actually worked well with him. Normally, we think he's too slow, etc., but the balls that Soligo or Peatling couldn't win directly off for themselves, and they did win quite a few just off themselves. Crouch was also, I think Crouch, as you know, he's a distributor, so I think he worked very well with him. So Big Man's 100% right. Soligo wasted a 3-vote game on a trial. It was the best game he's ever played in his life, and it was as good a game as anybody could really play. It was an absolute ripper, and he was really impressive. And I reckon that Peatling, who he was used in the middle and on a half-forward flank. Not sure why he was doing the half-forward flank bit as well. But, I thought he did well no matter where he was played, whether he was in the middle or whether he was on the half-forward flank. So, look, I was a huge Peatling fan. I really, really wanted us to get him because he's in growth mode at the moment. If you going back and look at the last few games he played for GWS, he was just starting to blossom, and we're going to get the benefit of that in this year or the years to come.
I've already been pulled up, mate. It's only pre-season episode 1. Firewalker's got me already. Taylor was taken after Soligo. My memory said it was the other way around, but there you go. I'm a very old man.
I think you were right about Richmond, though. They had 3 picks, I think, in the late 20s in that draft. And, I think Soligo was definitely in their sights. And thank God they let him get through to us.
Yeah. Mate, in terms of our ruck situation, that seems to be a bit of a concern. Riley O'Brien traditionally is a very good pre-season trainer. How did he go over the journey over the summer?
Look, it's interesting because I've definitely been concerned just a bit about his form. Look, he is a veteran at this point, so sometimes, they take a little bit longer to get going, or that, they're not going quite at the same intensity as some of the fringe or younger players who are really trying to make an impression. I was worried about how much he was getting beaten by McAndrew in the ruck in match sim.
Yeah.
And look, that was definitely the case at Port Pirie for the first half. I think, obviously, we know Rob's got a great tank, so he finishes off games really well, and I thought he found his mojo a bit in that second half at Port Pirie, and then I actually thought he had a pretty decent game on last Friday against Jordan Sweet. So, look, it's a hard one because I think so much of Rob's game comes down to his marking, and when he's marking well and he floats back
100%.
and takes those contested grabs, it makes such a difference. When he's got the dinner plate hands and they're dropping off, and that really it doesn't suit us too well. So look, I think a lot of it comes down to his marking. Obviously, his ruck work is important too because we're such a high stoppage team. Um, I think that will take care of itself. Hopefully, not too many taps to the opposition near goal. But look, I think he actually is starting to find some form. Hopefully, that continues on. And I think at the very least, I don't think you need an absolute star ruckman. I just think they need to make sure they match it with the opposition each week, and hopefully Rob can give us that. It's probably more so what happens when if Rob goes down. He's been pretty durable to this point, but you never know what could happen. So fingers crossed he doesn't get an injury because we don't have much in reserve.
No. Although, I've got to say, on Friday night, without getting ahead of ourselves, I thought Chris Burgess actually made a pretty good account of himself. But I don't think you want to rely on him.
Sorry to steal your thunder if you're going to talk about it later, but one thing I will say is I was really impressed by Toby Murray on Friday night. Not that just as a forward, and he took us some fantastic grabs, and he's really improving quickly, which is a great sign. But also his ruck work was actually really good too. He was getting up there. He's obviously got a great leap. So, if that's what it comes down to during the year, if obviously Strawn's not 100% and Rob goes down, if it has to be Murray, might not be the worst thing. Obviously it's not ideal, but I think he showed some good signs on Friday that he's definitely something to worth persisting with.
And what about sorry, Macca, go on.
I totally agree with that. Actually, he's got a beautiful set of hands for marking.
Yeah.
I was watching with Mrs. Macca, and she made a comment about him, one of his kicking, and which wasn't too good. And I said, look, this guy's really learning how to play footy at the moment. And I said, look, he's got very good hands, and I think for a big match, and that's a bloody good start. And I said he's reasonably mobile. And I said he did kick one beautiful kick for a goal. And I said, this guy, he just needs time because I think he's going to end up being an AFL player. That's just my opinion, but I think he will.
Yeah, look, he's raw. He's definitely raw, but as I said, he's definitely showing some serious improvement in a short space of time. He's put a lot of muscle over the summer. It looks totally different to what he did this time last year. And he's really jumping and showing some real presence in the air. So I think he's a self-belief guy. He really needs confidence, and maybe every so often he's going to have this really poor game, but gee, he's strung a couple of good games together because he was great at Port Pirie as well. So he's exciting. I think I wouldn't think he's AFL ready just yet, but he's probably a bit closer than I thought.
Yeah, I'd go along with that. He's certainly got the physical attributes for it, and needs to tidy up skills and all the rest of it. But I think brother Nick was a bit the same when he first lobbed on the scene. He was just a big unit who could get a lot of it, but wasn't real tidy. But he's certainly coming along in that department as his career progresses. Mate, up forward, a lot of people saying, Matthew Nicks came out and said that Joshua Shelley had, quote, the best pre-season he's ever seen. Thoughts?
Yeah, Kane Corns loved that comment, didn't he? Look, I think it's definitely, there's some truth to it. He as soon as he came back, I was like, wow, he looks fit. His running has definitely improved. Like, he's always been one of these guys that sometimes his running's been all right, other times he's sort of been dragging at the back of the pack. But this summer he's been really strong in that regard. He looks fit, and I think as a forward, he's not a traditional front and square crumbing player. He's a bit of a roamer who works up the field, takes marks, hits up targets. Obviously, it's a beautiful kick, and for that you're going to need a big engine. So I think it's really important that he built that. And I think he's going to have a pretty solid year. He's obviously going to kick goals, but I think he's the kind of player that can average a fair number of touches a game as well and be a real score involvement player. So the fitter he is, the easier that's going to be for him.
Yeah, it wouldn't be surprised if he got a couple of runs in the middle at times as well.
Yeah, look, his midfield stuff's interesting because I think that he's definitely got the ability to accumulate. I wonder sometimes about his ability to sort of step around traffic and drive his legs. Sometimes he freezes up a bit, when he has some pressure on him. So I think his contested game could still improve a bit, but look, he can find the ball, and you want it in his hands as much as possible. And even if it's to get him into the game, maybe it's getting a bit cold up forward for him. I don't mind him getting chucked up there, but I do think we have other options, even with guys like Rankin and Peatling who can play forward, but I think they're probably more natural around the ball as well.
Yeah. The thing that we noticed about Rash is that the little opportunity that he did get to a 10-centre bounce, his conversion rate in terms of clearances was amazing. His ability to extract the ball or hit the ball at pace rather than just be that stationary, under the ruckman's nose kind of guy, was outstanding. And we were certainly crying out, weren't we, Mac, for a little bit more of him through the middle. I wonder whether there'll be a bit of a bit more opportunity with him and Neil Bullen to rotate through there and give Rankin a bit of a chop. We've certainly got versatility in that spot now.
Look, I think he'll definitely get a few CBAs at least every game. But I'm not sure he's going to be a mainstay in there just yet. I think, unfortunately for him, I think Isaac Rankin has sort of gone ahead of him in that regard in terms of getting midfield usage. So he might have to wait a little bit longer. But in the meantime, we obviously know how damaging he is around goals. He's got such good goal sense, and he's such a great dual-sided player as well, which makes him so dangerous in either pocket. And look, if he doesn't play much midfield this year, I still think he's going to kick us 30+ goals. He's going to set up a lot of goals by foot. I think either way, I think he's going to have a fantastic year.
Now, a few people in the chat, Tivor, I think, was questioning Tex. What sort of a pre-season has he had, considering the issues with the back that he had last year?
It's been a lot of running for Tex this summer. He's had some back issues that have sort of reoccurred throughout. It's been better definitely since, I'd say, mid-January. Before, in December, he was basically solely in the rehab group because of those back and hamstring issues. It is a bit of a worry that, because obviously this time last year, I think he had to pull out of round one because of back issues. So it's definitely become a bit of a thing for him, and hopefully he's able to manage that throughout this year. And we'll probably have to manage him as well from week to week, or rest him for long trips. Because obviously a plane ride's probably not going to help in that regard. I think that he's still, obviously looks really fit. He's done that much running that he's probably looks probably the fittest I've seen him for quite some time. It's just a matter of him staying on top, because I think Tex is one of those players that needs to be fully fit to play his best. And
Great.
Obviously, as the year goes on, he's probably going to get a bit sore, and we'll have to be really on top of that. And even if he's in good form, it's going to be hard to say, Tex, you need a rest. You kicked 3 or 4 last week, but you're a bit sore now. That's going to be the trouble, because it's easy to say now, we'll rest Tex, but when push comes to shove and 4 points are on the line, it gets a bit harder to make those calls. So hopefully, and I'm sure we will be pretty smart with Tex this year.
The last one before we probably get into looking more closely at the Port game, and it probably flows into the Port game. I get the impression that Luke Pedlar is basically on a charter to make it as a forward, and he's out of the conversation in terms of being a midfielder, and it really bothers me because he's not a marking forward, and yet often on Friday night we saw him being the lead-up target or having the ball put on his head. And I just don't think... I said it last year at the end of season podcast, Macca, and I haven't changed my mind. I think Peds has either got to make it as a midfielder or he's not going to make it.
Well, actually, I'm going to have to disagree with you, Feen. I think you were right last year saying that, but this year, because of there are so many more opportunities or different players going through the midfield, I think it's going to be impossible for him to get there unless he's doing something absolutely outstanding. So,
well, that's what I mean. That's what I mean. He's not going to have the opportunity.
No, so I really, if he's going to make it, I think he has going to have to make it as a forward. What do you think, Big Man?
Oh, I'm probably siding with you, Macca. I think that's because of we have some serious depth now in that midfield. Obviously, there's question marks over how much A-grade talent we have in there, but I think in terms of the numbers, there's a lot more numbers to go through there, and Pedler's probably one that has to be left out in that regard. He's an interesting play. He frustrates me a little bit because he does have a lot of class, but sometimes I find he tries too hard. He gets a bit clumsy. He makes mistakes that he shouldn't make by foot and hand, and it makes you think, oh, is he actually as good as we think? And then he will do something that's really special too.
Yeah.
So he's a bit of an enigma, if I can get that word out. But yeah, look, he's a strange player. But look, he was in he played the third quarter on the weekend once Tex came out. So he's obviously in the frame to some degree. I know Nixie pumped him up at Port Pirie as well. So he might be ahead of Murphy, I think, in terms of the next in line small forward.
Nobody's ahead of Murphy. But come on, mate. You know better than that.
Look, I think
photos.
When I said Murphy was in the A team, there was a few comments saying, "Oh, that's a worry." But yeah, you got to take those teams sometimes with a pinch of salt because they're trying to do different things. I think he is probably ahead of Murphy though. But with Neil Bullen coming in, obviously Keysy was best and fairest last year. So it is tough for Pedler to get in. I think he needs to find some form first in the Sandful, really dominate, kick a couple of bags, and then maybe hopefully you can see him in because, look, he has talent. He's an aggressive player, but he's also got some tricks.
There's absolutely no doubt about that.
Due to injury and other factors, I don't think we've seen the best of him. Hopefully we do. I wouldn't lie. I am losing a little bit of faith because it just hasn't come together in the last 18 months for him. But, it's 2023. He showed some serious signs. He won a Rising Star nom, so he can play. It's just, can he get a game and can he take advantage when he does?
Yeah, I love him. I think he's a great raw talent. I just worry that the squad's gone past him a little bit, and his injuries have, been an obstacle for him to build a real AFL standard engine. And I don't like seeing him going for. When you see him get put up against Tommy Stewart like he was in round 2 or whatever last year, and you think, what the hell is going on? If they're going to play him as a medium-sized forward, he's going to fail. He's not a medium-sized forward. He's a ground player. He's a ball player, and I just hope they don't set him up to fail. And I would rather that he went back to the twos and had a really good run at it and showed some good form in the position that he should be playing, and forces his way in through injury or opportunity. But if they try and shoehorn him in as a medium forward, it's not going to work, in my opinion.
Look, I agree, Feenix. I have to agree with that. But look, I will say he can take a specky. So he does have some aerial ability. I think the shoulders probably don't help at the moment. I do wince a bit seeing them both taped up. I'm sure that doesn't help his marking. I also agree. That Tom Stewart thing was that's a bit of a debacle, wasn't it? Hopefully we don't see anything like that this year because that came out of nowhere and I still can't believe that happened.
Unbelievable.
That of course doesn't go against Pedler. That goes against the coach.
100%.
Well, he's not the sort of player to do that role anyway. I wouldn't have thought. So it's just a strange call. Yeah.
Well, I think you're being kind. I called it lunacy. I just can't believe a coach did that.
No, well, let's not backtrack too far because we'll get PTSD onwards and upwards. All right, well, look, we will get on and talk about the match sim. Big Man, do you want to stick around or do you want to bugger off and
No, I don't want to stick around. I travelled up to Mount Barker last Friday because, to see the boys. I stayed for all 6 quarters, so No, I'd love to have a chat about the game.
All right. Well, just before we do that, just a couple of housekeeping issues. Macca, don't forget everyone who supports us on YouTube and on Discord. It's greatly appreciated. If you're listening on YouTube and you haven't yet joined our Discord community, I can highly recommend it during the season. There's lots going on. There's lots of banter, lots of chat. And on match days, we have a fantastic game day chat channel as well as you can chat like everyone is doing tonight on the stream. If you are on YouTube and you haven't yet subscribed and you like what you're seeing, then please go ahead and do so and give us a like. It always helps. I have put in Macca a YouTube membership option this year. We will be putting out some regular shows this year on sort of midweek and pre-game day. All our content is always going to be free. It's not going to be behind a paywall, but those who wish to support the podcast by becoming a YouTube member will get access to that pre-recorded content a little bit earlier, just as a thank you, really, just as a show of appreciation. So if you do feel like supporting us via YouTube, you can do so by joining the channel, or you can just drop us a super thanks or a super chat or whatever the hell else it's called on YouTube. Any assistance is gratefully appreciated. We have a couple of members already in our YouTube channel, which is most appreciated, and anyone else that feels like getting around it is more than welcome to do so. I have to make mention of the fact, as I said, Mac, that we are going to run a couple of shows during the week this year, so they will be pre-recorded, and we also are being given a lot more access to the club this year. So people that are listening tonight, stick around during the week and keep an eye on your YouTube feed, because there will be an interview with Sid Draper dropping during the week, which I'm really looking forward to. Sid's a young talent. We haven't really spoken about him yet in this conversation, but I think he's got a great future with us, and I'm really looking forward to having a chat. So that sort of stuff you'll be getting during the week on the Crowcast channel. So a lot more activity going forward on the Crowcast YouTube channel than previously. We're not just going to rely on the live stream. There's be a lot of pre-recorded stuff. I dropped a video, Macca, I don't know whether you saw it, on Matthew Nix last week, and it was extremely well supported, so very grateful about that. And I'm going to follow that up next week with a similar sort of a vein, looking at the historical precedent, but looking at list makeup and whether a team's success is more about the list than the coach. Most of the people that I surveyed, Macca and BIGMAN, lent towards the list being more important than the coach. What do you guys reckon?
No. Well, I'm going to say, that it's a combination of both, isn't it? You can have the best list in the world, and I think we've proved that at times. And if the coach isn't a really good coach and doesn't make the maximum usage of his team, you just don't get the results. And similarly, you can be the greatest coach in the world, and if you haven't got the players, you might get them to perform better than a lot of people think they should perform, but you can't get them to be the best team. So to me, it's a 50-50 situation. They both contribute to the end result, and a really good coach will get the maximum out of his players. If you've got the right players, then that works, and you'll do well.
What do you reckon, Big Man?
Pretty well said, I think. I think that I always lean a bit more to list management, just because I think you need stars. You need as many good players as possible. And I think a good coach, not only extracts the best out of those stars, but brings everyone else up. So, look, I'd say, I think 50-50 is about right. Maybe 60-40 in favour of the list, but you can't have one without the other, no doubt.
Yeah, someone on one of the chats, it might have been the YouTube chat, summed it up pretty well during the week. and said it's on a bit of a swinging scale, and I think that's probably right. I think you can have the best coach in the world, but if you don't have the cattle, you're not going to have success. And on the opposite side of the fence, as you guys said, if you've got the cattle but you haven't got a good coach, then they're not going to extract the best out of it. So I think a lot of it, I think, depends on, and I don't want to preempt the video that I'll drop in during the week, but just thinking off the top of my head, a lot of it, I think, depends on where the evolution of the squad is, and it makes you wonder whether Matthew Nix was the coach for the time, and whether as this squad develops and matures, whether, and that was a question that we asked last week, whether he's going to be the one to take us to the promised land. I guess time will tell, won't it?
Well, I think this year will actually. Yeah, I was just going to say, big man, I reckon that this year will give us a very good insight into it, because unless we have an outstanding, shocking run of injuries, I believe we've got a very good squad that we can field, and it's now up to the players are fit. We saw that, so that part of it's been done. Now it's the usage of those players, how they manage, how they're placed, what the game plan is. So it's very, very heavily dependent on the coach. And this year we'll find out, Feen, whether this guy is going to take us to the promised land or whether he should be sent to some other land.
I think we'll find out by gather round. What do you reckon, big man?
It's good. It's a good point. I mean, I think that since I think the rebuild started around 2019, there's been more hits than misses now, I think, in the draft. Obviously, the Maxi pick didn't work out too well for us, but I think we've nailed quite a few of those top-end picks since. And we've created a pretty good list. Whether it has the star factor of, maybe our 2015, 16, 17 list, maybe not. But I think it's just as deep, if not deeper. So in that regard, look, definitely the strongest list that Nix has had to coach since he arrived, and it's always hard to know. Obviously, I think Richmond were in a position where they could have turfed Damien Hardwick because they thought he wasn't the man for the job. They had the whole board thing going on there, and they stood by him, and he won a flag the next year. So sometimes you just don't know. It happens very quickly when things turn around. So it could be this year. Who knows? We have to wait and see. But look, if we start as well as we did last year, then there'll have to be questions.
8 years it took Hardwick, and also Chris Fagan took 8 years, and a bit of a few parallels. People disagree with me, but I see a few parallels between Hardwick's tenure at Richmond and Nix's tenure at Adelaide. Obviously, Hardwick had more success early, but it was a similar sort of a trend line. But you're right, Macca. It really is make or break for Matthew this year. I feel like our squad is in the best shape it's been since probably 2015. I feel like they've addressed the imbalance in the age profile by bringing in, Cumming and Pete Ling and Alex Neil-Bullen. We've drafted our a midfielder at the highest point we've ever drafted a midfielder, if you discount Andrew McLeod's bargain basement from Jared Neesham. So we really, we've been able to recruit good players back to the club in Rankin and Dawson over the last couple of years as well. We have an extremely exciting forward line. We have a very solid defence that reminds me very much of the Rutten days with Bass and those blokes back there. Just good, reliable blokes. I'm very bullish about our list, and hence I'm quite hopeful about our season. But we'd want to be 3-1 with our fixture. We'd want to be 3-1, Mac, I reckon.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And I think the list is there, the players are there, with the support's been there as well. We must mention that too. He's been giving a coaching director, and it does seem like the guy he's got the goods, I think, and would hopefully will stop things like Murphy being picked and that fiasco with Pedler that time. and the four tools selection. In one game we just against Hawthorn, which was an absolute joke. So I mean, Nick's has really got some. He has got a couple of nasties against his name, and this year he's got the goods. He's been given. He's got tons of backing. He's got the players. He's got every opportunity. And you're quite right. I was thinking that if you look at our first 6 games, it's possible to be 4-2, 5-1, and I think we really want that if we're going to be the team that we hope that we really think the team should be.
Yeah. All right, we'll have a look at the list a little bit further towards the end of pre-season after the Brisbane game. We'll have a look at maybe who our starting 23 might be. But for right now, let's have a look at a little bit more closely at what happened on Friday night. Shall we, Macca?
Yep. I've got my analysis of them all here.
All right, you talked through my beautiful little transition there. Adelaide 22-11, 143. Port Adelaide 14-15, 99. I think probably the biggest indicator was the score after the 3 quarters, which is when things started to change around and all that. And I've got to say, I know Port were a little bit undermanned, a few injuries and all the rest of it, but a lot to like, I thought.
Well, after those first 3 quarters, we did change our total team. Port Adelaide still had 8 of the players that played in the first 3 quarters. So that's one of the reasons why they did gain a little bit of ground there for a while. And then once they took them back, well, then it showed that they have a complete lack of depth, I think.
Well, I mean, the last 3 quarters aren't really worth talking about in the context of best 22. I'm more interested in what happened in the first 2 or 3 quarters because there was some interesting selections. Wayne Miller was one that I was surprised got a run with the A's, and I felt like he just felt his way through the game. What did you guys think?
Yeah. You got a big man.
Sorry, I got to stop cutting you off, Macca. Look, I think it's definitely been a thing during the preseason training is that Miller has been the preferred player over, say, Nankervis at halfback. Now, whether that's the right or wrong thing is up for debate. Personally, I would love to see Wayne get some form in the SANFL first, obviously in these preseason games as well, just to find his best form. When we know when he's at his best, he's taking ground, he's dodging and weaving, fending, all that good stuff. I've seen it in parts in training and these preseason games, but I still think he's got some way to go in terms of rediscovering his best form back there. So, whereas I think Nankervis is in better form at present. So, it looks like they want to play Wayne as soon as possible, and I think that's probably the way it's going to end up being round 1, just based on everything. Like, I don't think I've seen him in the B team once this whole summer, so I think that probably gives an indication as to how the coaches view him.
Well, I'm 100% the same as you, big man. I think I thought he was fairly loose as a halfback flanker on the weekend. When you got Nankervis, who he was outstanding in the twos, and he's much better than them. And I agree with you. At this stage, I would have had Nankervis in the side, Miller playing in the twos to build him his confidence up and get his form right up as well. So I thought they did that one back to front. That's just my opinion. But to me, I wouldn't have been playing Miller in this game. But like you said, Nixie seems to be favouring him, and as we know, Nixie does play favourites.
Yeah, look, I'm getting a bit of amnesia about last year, because this time last year, Nank was in a similar boat, and we had to wait about a month for him to come into the team, and he played well straight away, basically. So it feels like he's been the forgotten man again. I'm not quite sure why. He had a little few injury problems in December, but basically since the Christmas break, he's done everything. So, and he's looked good. So I really hope we can get Nank into the team as soon as possible. If it was up to me, he would definitely be playing round 1, but I'm not on the selection committee, so it's not up to me.
I wonder
I'm in the same
sometimes
boat.
whether Nankervis is a victim of his own laconic style. He's a lanky sort of fella. He's a loper. He doesn't have quick steps. He's not that kind of a bloke. He has a little bit of time on his hands, so he's a bit like, Mark Warren cricket. And I just wonder sometimes whether the perception of him is tarnished a little bit or tainted a little bit because of just the manner in which he carries himself, and he carries himself on the footy field. But I'm with you. Wayne Miller to me is a long way back, and I struggle to understand why, when we've got so much talent across that half back line, so many choices, why we're persisting with a bloke who's spent a large part of the last few seasons on the sidelines. I would have thought, a good block of work in the SANFL was minimum requirement for them to even look at him.
Probably
Common
is
sense says
kicking
that.
Have it again. Sorry about that. I was just going to say, it's probably his kicking that's the reason they want him in the team, because obviously we know he had a couple of iffy kicks on Friday, but he's a beautiful kick when in form. And if you look at our back mix, it's probably not the greatest bunch of ball users. Obviously Hingy can hit a nice dart every so often, and a few other guys are okay in that regard. But I think he's probably the standout ball user back there. And that's probably the reason why they might be preferring him. But look, the thing with Nank is that he's very dynamic player. He's tougher than he looks. He's a skinny guy, but gee, he's got that bony strength. He's really good at shrugging tackles and swiveling the hips, and I think you would have seen that on Friday night as well. So, and look, Miller is not the greatest defensively either. He's not terrible in that regard, but I don't think it's a strength of his. So, that's the way I see it. As I said, I think I'd prefer Nank, but I'm probably getting in my head that Miller is going to be there. It doesn't mean Nank won't be there, particularly if we get some injuries. But it seems to be the way it's going at the moment.
Yeah, look, obviously Saligo was a standout in the first three quarters. I felt like Riley O'Brien actually rucked pretty well. I felt like there was a little bit of a change up in terms of our centre square work. He wasn't as predictable. I don't think that the opposition was terribly challenging for him, but it was good to see that he was actually able to put a few down on chess. I guess it seems to me that I guess if it was me looking from the outside in, it seems to me like we're going to have a lot more rotations through the midfield this year. We have a lot of options that can run through the mids, on a wing, a pinch hit up forward, have a bit of a rest, and I feel like that's really reflective of where we were at sort of circa 2006, 2008 with Neil Craig, where we just seem to have massive rotations through the midfield.
Yep, and we do have a lot of options. As you said, Saligo was absolutely outstanding, a brilliant game. And the way he did, that particular episode where he just his strength now. I mean, he just pushed Sweet aside, and I think he ran about 30 metres, but that's beside the point. But it was a brilliant clearance by him. I thought Dawson also played very, very well wherever he played. He played sometimes in the middle, sometimes he's playing in other positions, but Dawson was really, really in top form, and Peatling, I thought, showed us why we recruited him. He looked good wherever he played, but he goes in hard and he's fast too. He just adds a little bit of speed we never used to have before, Feen. And I think Saligo looked like he gained a little bit of a yard as well. So that's something that really, really stood out, and I think Big Man would support that we really, really looked like we had a fast midfield, even though Crouch was in there at times.
Look, it's definitely something I've noticed throughout the summer is that we are pretty speedy in there. Particularly, we didn't even have Rankin in there on Friday, and we know how quick he is. So I think that we're going to have a pretty deep group that rotates through there. I think you're right about that, Macca. And I think that keeps the opposition on their toes. I think it makes us unpredictable in that regard. It'll be interesting to see what the exact makeup is throughout the season, but no, there's no doubt. And I agree about Peatling. He's exciting. He's a pretty natural clearance player, but he works hard around the ground, takes marks. He's actually probably a better ball user than I gave him credit for at the Giants. I thought he was a bit scrappy, but he's not. He will have the odd shank, but apart from that, no, he's pretty tidy by foot, and he's. I feel like he's a bit of a contortionist. He sort of gets around tackles, twists his body in certain ways. He can draw a high free too. Just wait for that. He got one on the weekend, but he'll get a lot more this year. So no, he's going to be a great pickup, and gee, we paid very little for him. I think it was a second rounder, and we got a third and fourth back. So
he was a bargain.
Yeah. I mean, credit to Justin Reed on that one. That was a fantastic get.
Yeah, I stole him. Absolutely stole him.
And, he's a bit of a late starter. He had a bit of a rocky road through the academy up there and spent a bit of time in the twos, and it took him a while to get going. So, despite the fact that he's sort of that early to mid-20s, not a huge amount of footy under his belt, and from what I can see, just a massive upside. Works really hard, got all the attributes you want, just a ripper. So I guess the one thing that I was looking for that I didn't really see, Macca, and I know it's early days and a bit congested up there at Mount Barker and all the rest of it, I didn't really see evidence of any sort of change in game plan or any. I mean, we ran the ball at times when Port allowed us to, but there was a lot of going up and down the lines as well. I didn't see a huge amount of diagonal stuff. What were your thoughts on that? I was hoping to see something a little bit more representative of a brand.
I did think we were trying to move the ball a little bit quicker than when we have in the past. Because I think at times and there were a couple of instances where we moved it so quickly that we got goals very easily going from defence to forward because of the speed at which we moved and catching them each line of Port Adelaide out of position. So I think the emphasis is going to be on moving the ball. If the opportunity is there to get some speed on the movement of the ball. They seem to be always trying to get somebody who was loose, who could actually run and make a break, and we were going over lines all the time, which made it very difficult for them to stop us.
Mm. What do you think, big man?
I think that when we moved it quick and we had the one-on-ones, running towards goal with Thilthorpe and such, particularly with Port's undersized defence, it looks really dangerous in those situations.
Mm.
There was a quarter there, probably the third from memory, where they definitely bottled us down a bit. We started resorting a lot more to chipping it around. That may have been intentional. It may have been the coach saying, practice trying to maintain the ball and get rid of, waste a few minutes. And we're also kicking to the wind, I think, at that point of the game, which may have had an effect as well. That second quarter, though, that was pretty ballistic. And obviously, we're winning a lot of center clearances during that period too, which always helps. Like, as much as there's a focus on ball movement from defence and transition and everything. If you can win that center clearance and get a clean clearance, particularly when you've got a good set of tall forwards like we do, it makes such a difference. And hopefully, we will become a better clearance team through the center, especially this year, because we're a high stoppage team, but we're also, I think our clearance differential last year was pretty ordinary. So if we can get better in that regard, well, just means more inside 50s for us. And I think, we've got the cattle up there to capitalise on that.
Well, we saw that in 23, didn't we? Where we certainly weren't high on the list. We're probably middle of the pack in terms of inside 50s or average inside 50s, but our scores from inside 50s were off the charts. And, I think we're a top 3 scoring team in the competition. And, we all know what happened in 24. So, I mean, I think Port allowed us to run. I don't think their midfield was necessarily on song. They looked a little bit underdone. at times, and you don't know what they were training in terms of their setup, etc. You don't know how much Josh Carr has taken over and whether he was trying to have a look at a few different things. There's a lot of unknowns, and it's so difficult to know. But I think there's probably, maybe 4 or 5 spots that are probably still up for grabs. But I think the making of the first 23 is probably almost there.
Yeah, let me just throw a couple of players at you. I just want to mention one in particular, Neil Bullen. He's a great get. I don't know whether you noticed that the guy is a dead set natural leader, and he's got to be, and I'm sure he will be in our leadership group. I noticed that after other players had, like he might have been involved in the play and he might not have, but he often went over to a player and spoke to them after they'd been involved in a play. And he was really just acting like a captain or a coach out there. And I just think that he's going to be a great get for our side because he's really experienced. He knows what he's talking about. He's got that leadership quality about him. Apparently, the players do look up to him already. And I don't know whether you guys noticed that he having those little chats to players all the time.
Yep. Yeah.
I thought that was good.
You can't underestimate the value of having a premiership player with 10 years experience under his belt in your side. A lot was made for what we paid for him. He's 28, blah blah blah. But the guidance that he's going to give blokes like Rochelle and Peds and some of these other blokes that are coming through, Sid Draper, etc. And the settling influence I think that he's going to have as we progress and expectations build, I think is going to be invaluable. And couldn't agree with you more, Macca. Very valuable inclusion.
Yeah. Another one I want to just throw at you guys is Dowling. Now, I thought Billy Dowling was excellent on his wing. Now, and I know that he's Cummings going to come into the side and that's going to make a problem. But, I thought Billy Dowling was I thought he won his wing very well.
What do you think, big man?
Yeah, it caught me by surprise when I saw him on the wing to start with in the A's because he hadn't really featured much in the A's in the summer. Obviously, Scholl and Cumming were out, so that made some room for him. He's had a good last few weeks, Billy, and I was definitely impressed too, Macca. He found space. He's usually a pretty good ball user, particularly his long kicking. He's got a fair roost on him. And he usually makes good decisions too. He's not, he's obviously a bit of a skinny lad. He's not the greatest ground ball sort of player, but he can find space big time. So he's a natural wingman in that regard. And he's also a dangerous forward too. He's got really good sense for the goals. If he's having a set shot, you can almost lock it in every time. So, he's obviously he showed great signs last year. He probably took a little while to get going this pre-season, I found. But his last few weeks have been pretty good. I don't know if he gets in that round one team because unless, obviously if Scholl, his knee doesn't pick up, maybe there's an opportunity there. I think Cumming obviously takes one of the wings. It'd be interesting to see whether they go with Chase or Billy if there's a wing available because they both started in the A team on Friday and they're different sort of players. I'd be curious to see which one they'd go with if that came up.
Yeah, it's a fair comment. Jones also, I thought he played very well, as good as he can play. I was quite impressed with his game as well. He certainly inserted himself into the game, whereas often you don't see him in a game. But I thought he sort of pushed his way into the game as the game went along, and I thought he played a reasonably good game.
Yeah, he's a funny player, Chase. He's an enigma. A bit like Pedler in that regard because if you list all his attributes on paper, they look really good because he's quick, he can run, he can tackle, he can kick goals and he can take a mark, but it rarely seems to really come together in terms of a game. Obviously, he had some good form in that 2023 season on the wing. I think he's showing pretty good signs. Again, I don't know if he's going to be best 22 just yet, but I think in terms of the next man up, he's a pretty handy one to have because he does have AFL attributes. It's just he hasn't quite put them together for an entire season. So, no, he's an interesting one, but he definitely was good on Friday and showed that he's pretty handy around goals too, Chase. So, he adds a different mix. He's not really an accumulator out there as much as a Dowling or Scholl type. They're a bit more of that heart, that running to space and getting a lot of possessions.
Yeah.
Chase is more of your dynamic, explosive player, and it doesn't always work out. He's not. Sometimes his decision making isn't the greatest, but no, he's showing good signs, Chase, and he looks a lot better than he did this time last year when he was coming off that foot injury.
I actually prefer Chase behind the ball. I feel like he's one of those players that does best when he's running at it. When he's got to turn around, that's when it gets a little bit problematic for him. He's a straight line player as far as I'm concerned, and a bit like Marty Matney used to be. Give him a straight line and let him run at it, and don't complicate things too much, and he can be a valuable player. But I think I guess it's a good problem to have, because at the end of the day, you want to have a mix of attributes. You want to have some tough straight line players. You want some players with flair and a bit of outside run. And we've got all of that at the moment. So very interesting to see over the course of the next couple of weeks who starts to embed themselves in that 23. There's probably, I would say, maybe 27 players that could, by rights consider themselves a chance for that 23. I'll just talk quickly about a couple of them that are on the outer. Sam Berry looks like he's super fit, big man, but again, don't know where he fits.
Yeah, look, he's probably the victim of Peatling coming into the team.
Correct.
In terms of giving that grunt, that tackling. Peatling probably gives a bit more. Well, they're both about as quick as each other, but Peatling has a bit more class than Berry, and he's a bit cleaner, which obviously was a problem for Sam towards the end of last year with his fumbling. Look, Sam's one of those players who's right on the edge. He's definitely too good for the Sandful. There's just enough rough edges to his game that sort of hold him back. His kicking can vary quite a bit. I think sometimes he loses concentration with his kicking and decision making. And obviously, as I said before, that fumbling. But he is a pretty good player. He's so strong. He breaks tackles, and he's a clearance beast, and he can take a mark as well. So, and he's deceptively quick, Sam. I hear some people say, Barry's one of those slow players, but he's got a good slow first 10 meters. So, look. It's a tough one. As I said, he's a bit like Chase. If we lose a midfielder and Berry's the first to come in, and it's probably between him or Schallenberg, I'd imagine, in that regard, then you could do a lot worse than Berry. I think it's unfortunate for him personally that for whatever reason he couldn't find a new club next year, because I think he is going to be in a bit of no man's land at the Crows unless something changes, because Peatling came in and obviously Rankin's now moved him to the midfield, it just makes it that much harder for him. But no, I do like Sam. He trains really well. At training, sometimes he looks just as good as any other mids in there. But when at AFL level, it just hasn't quite come together for him to really cement that spot.
He did have a good back. He did have a good back end of the season last year. He does know how to find a goal when he's up forward. I really like some of his attributes as an inside mid. He's got a low centre of gravity. He keeps his feet. He can keep his hands free. He tends to be able to break through congestion. His disposal was a bit lacking, and his ball handling for some bloody reason just went off last season. My personal view is there's an AFL player there. Whether that's an AFL player with the Adelaide Crows, I'm yet to really. Again, probably Matt Crouch is the one that would need to give way, and at the moment Crouch is playing quite well, so you don't see that happening. And as you say, big man, he's fighting with Harry Schomburg, who I thought also played pretty well on Friday night.
Yeah, look, Harry's had a great pre-season. Obviously had that Achilles last year, and it took him a while to get going. Probably never really did get going last year, and he was one of the ones where, they come back after the off-season break, and you're like, wow, like he just looked really fit, really hardened. He seems to have regained that speed that he probably lost after the surgery, and his tenacity and intensity at training is right up there. His strength over the ball has definitely improved. His kicking still, he's hit or miss from time to time. Even that's probably gotten a bit better too. So, look, he's not doing a whole lot wrong. Again, probably a victim of that midfield depth that we now have. And he's another one where he's probably maybe at the wrong club for him, because I think he also has AFL attributes. It's going to be interesting to see what we would do there. Obviously there's Sid Draper too, who maybe just preferred over both Berry and Schoenberg just because of how much talent he has. But no, Harry hasn't done a whole lot wrong. He's definitely been one of the most impressive over the summer, and he was good again on Friday night. He's looking quick out there, and he's he's pretty dynamic player when he spreads for the contest. So I'm liking what I'm seeing, even though he's probably not going to feature round one, you'd think.
That's I got a question for both of you. Curtin and Draper, do either of them or both of them make an opening team?
You go first, big man.
I think Curtin definitely does. It's an interesting one with Curtin because in December and late November, he was training almost exclusively as an on-baller, and then basically once they came back from the Christmas break, he started training as a forward, and he's looked better and better in that role as the pre-season's gone on. He's an interesting player because he's got a lot of facets to his game. He's pretty good in the air. He's still got some way to go in terms of his body work and everything, but he's quite good in the air. He's great at ground level. He's tough. He's got surprisingly good speed for a guy at his height and size. I think Nixie talked about how he had done speed training over the summer back in Perth. I wouldn't be surprised if it was the same guy that Paddy Cripps used to improve.
He definitely looks quicker.
Yeah, he's good. He always had good lateral movement, Dan, but he's definitely improved that straight line speed, and that acceleration, which was probably an issue for him last year, particularly with that knee injury that he had. I think that would have made things hard for him. But he can play anywhere, obviously, and I think he's a really natural guy in terms of leading up at the ball carrier. He seems to find space. He gets front position really well, and when he gets in his hands, he usually makes good decisions. And he's got some tricks too with his lateral movement and selling some candy, which we probably haven't seen just yet, heaps of, but he's definitely got in the kit bag. So he's still a work in progress, but I think they want to play him. And I suspect it's going to be essentially that fourth tall rotating off the bench, maybe a bit of wing time as well in case to get into the game, and also just give him some flexibility up and down the ground. Draper, I think he's got sub written all over him, I reckon they want to play him, but
yeah, that's what I think.
It's hard. Yeah, it's hard with that midfield mix to really find a spot for him just yet. But I think they want to play him. So, and look, he was great in Port Pirie. He was pretty quiet on Friday nights at Mount Barker. But to be fair, his centre bounce attendances were really low. I think he only had 5 or 6 of them. So that wouldn't have made things easy. But geez, he's got speed to burn. So. Yeah, I think both will play, and I think Draper is probably going to be sub, although we never know. And look, injuries obviously are a factor as well.
Well, that's exactly the same way I've seen it. What about you, Feen?
I wouldn't play Draper as sub. I think it's a mistake to play. I mean, I think we messed around with Curtin last year. And I think if you're going to play the kid, you play him. He may come off as a sub, but I think if you're going to play him, you start him on the ground. I would play him. I think there are flashes from him that are very encouraging. We haven't heard a lot about his back, big man. He obviously had that back issue last year. I wonder whether he can run out a game, and if if his fitness isn't quite there yet, I'd probably prefer him to spend a couple of weeks in the twos just topping that off. But he's got A grader written all over him. That's my opinion on Draper. In terms of Curtin, I'm so glad they're playing him up forward as a lead up. I think he's got a lot to offer in that position, and the fact that we can also throw him into the midfield mix to change things up and just give some different looks. I think he's one of those blokes, isn't he? That I think they've been scratching their heads, going, "What's his role?" But I think his role is as that connector type, a bit on the wing, a bit high half forward, maybe run through the midfield, maybe coming in behind Riley and Fogg when they're leading up, that sort of a role.
Yeah. Well, I think it's pretty obvious they are going to play him, and Draper's the one that whether he's a sub or whether he gets a game or whether he doesn't make it, you're not so sure. The other one I thought that really suffered from all the new boys coming in, with Neil Bullen and Peatling at times being on the half-forward flank with Keys. I thought that at times Keys, and with Keys, I didn't see much of Keys during the game.
Yeah, look, he's. I wouldn't worry too much about Keys. I do agree that Neil Bullen might steal a bit of his thunder at times, but look, they're pretty good to have both of them up there. And I was just another thing about before we move on to another player, just with Draper. I think the back issue thing's probably been overstated a bit. There was definitely a period there where he was being managed more than your typical draftee. But gee, I'll tell you what, since probably mid-January, he's done all the work, and his fitness levels are really good. And it's not surprising if you look at him; he's absolutely ripped. So, look, I think we'll have to be patient with him in terms of him as a clearance player, because he's a very natural clearance player, but he's still trying to figure out what he can and can't do at the moment with his body size and against the bigger bodies, because he does struggle at times to break tackles. If he gets caught, he usually stays caught.
Just can't get separation yet the way he could previously, I'm sure, in his career. He's just working that out, isn't he, at the moment?
Yeah, and I mean, that's only natural. That's what tends to happen. It's very rare you get a guy like Harley Reid who just seems to fend off everyone, but he's not that sort of guy. I think he's got the frame that's going to keep putting on muscle, which will help in that regard. And look, he's so quick over those first 5 meters. He loves to put a step on as soon as he gets it, and usually he does get out. But I mean, just get ready for a few holding the balls or him getting clamped down a bit from time to time if he does play in the AFL early days. But he's still figuring his way out through that. But I'm so excited about what he can do, because we haven't had a genuine speedy mid like him for quite some time. Obviously, we've got Rankin coming through there as well, which is equally as exciting. But no, he's a talent. But I think we do need to be patient. I don't think we'll see the absolute best of him this year. It'll probably take a couple of years just for him to figure out exactly what he can and can't do.
I think
he did give what. Sorry, Finn, go ahead.
No, you go, mate.
I was just going to make one comment about Draper, that there was one brilliant clearance from the centre bounce where exactly what you were talking about, that acceleration where we saw it live, and a very good example of it, where he just played come out the centre, but he burst out the centre. The speed which he came out was exhilarating, and like you said, once he really finds his way around the traps and gets used to it all at that level, it's going to be a very exciting player to watch.
Look, in terms of pure speed and that first step and that agility, he's probably only second to Rankin at the club, I'd say. So he's got some real wheels. He's going to be really fun to watch. But look, just temper your expectations, I think, and just be excited.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of excitement, the forward line in general, to me, is an area of excitement. What do you guys think is the right mix there? We've obviously got Curtin, Fogarty, Tex and Riley as the talls, and then a cast of about 6 million running through there as the smalls.
Where's Walker? Did you,
I
as
said
well?
Walker. I said
Oh,
Fogarty,
sorry.
Kurt,
I missed.
Tex, and Riley as the tools.
Sorry, I missed. I
Yeah.
missed the text. Sorry.
So how do we work that? How do we see that working out? I felt like Fogarty again looked a little bit at sea on Friday. Tex demands the ball obviously when he's on the ground, but whether we will get the same value from him this year is yet to be seen. Well, what's our best forward line, do you think, in terms of our tools, Macca?
You have a crack first, big man.
I think, look, if it was that, I think that's obviously Phil Thorpe. I think is the main, just because of his size and his aerial abilities come such a long way in the last couple of years. You know, Tex, obviously, we know what he's capable of. The thing with Fog is that I wouldn't be too concerned just yet about, you know, him being a bit quiet. I think he's one of those guys where I think hopefully, well, when I say hopefully, I'm pretty confident that he'll start to click as soon as, you know, round one begins. To be fair to Fog, you could have had a couple of goals on the weekend. He passed both of them off, so
Yeah, that's
he wasn't
true.
as bad as his stats may suggest. Curtin's an interesting one because, you know, if the four tools up forward is definitely going against the grain. If anything, most AFL clubs are going shorter. Although, to be fair, most of those clubs wouldn't have the luxury of the quality tools we do, which, I mean, if you look at our list profile, it's definitely a strength. So I think, you know, as I said a bit earlier, I think, you know, you're never really going to have four tools in the 1-4 line at one time. Usually there's going to be one on the bench. Curtin can also play on the wing as well if we're looking a bit stodgy up there. I think that's probably the mix we're looking at the moment. Whether they persist with the Curtin thing, I'm not sure. We'll have to wait and see. If it's working well, then that's fantastic. But, you know, obviously, if we look a bit slow and we're allowing, you know, the opposition team to rebound too easily because there's not enough ground pressure there, then that's obviously going to be a problem. So I think it's one of those ones where it's a bit of an experiment phase. But, you know, if it pays off, it's going to look really good. So, and then the smalls, I mean, I think Rochelle will spend the majority of his time up forward. You got Keys, Neil Bullen. Usually, you know, you're going to have the rotating midfielder, so probably the likes of Peatling and Saligo. Rankin will obviously spend quite a bit of time up forward as well. So that, I don't think it's going to look too different to previous years. I think it's probably more our midfield that's going to have the most change this season.
Yeah, and one thing for certain, they can't have more than three tools up there. You mentioned a heap of guys there that can play on the flank and the pockets, etc., and are all quality players. So you just got to get. It'll be just a question of getting the right blend between tools and smalls, because we've got the players. It's just about have the right mix. And again, and that might vary from team to team. You know, if against certain teams you might have more tools out there, but in others you might only have two tools out there. So, you know, it's just, I think it's a situation that we've got the players. It's just a matter of making the correct use of them on the day.
It's very interesting that it's very interesting how we're quite bullish about the team this year, and we've got all these options. And, you know, we brought in 3 new players, and they're all best 22 players. But isn't it funny? It's an indicator of how much we underperformed last year that we're quite bullish this season in terms of where the list sits and where the talent is and all that. So I really hope that the coaching staff has a very clear picture of what our best 23 looks like, how we want to play, and that they actually come up with a game plan that maximises our strengths rather than last season, which was just to go into that defensive mode, which it didn't look like the players bought into, and they certainly couldn't pull it off.
And you made a good point earlier, Feenix. Like Port Adelaide didn't look quite up to their usual intensity levels, and like I don't think I've seen Zach Butters play a worse game, to be honest.
No, he was hardly there.
Yeah, so like we have to take it with a bit of grain of salt. You never know quite where the other team's at. But at the same time, you're right. We can only judge on what we see and what we know about our list, and it hasn't changed an amazing amount in one in one season. There was definitely a bit of underperformance last year, but I think if you look at the players that were in our round one team against Gold Coast last year and compare those players to what we're going to likely have in round one this year, it does look quite a fair bit improved. So I think there's a bit of optimism about that.
Oh, look, it is a better team. There's no doubt about that. But I think we also underperformed last year in the sense that there were many reasons for that. There were some strange coaching moves in about 2 or 3 of the games. But apart from that, we also did have injuries to key players, quite a lot to it. And I think that if you look at the teams that we actually did beat or got very, very close to beating in narrow losses, we were far better than the situation where we ended up. But I'm very glad we did end up where we did, because that enabled us to get a quality midfielder, which we've all been screaming out for year after year when we go to the draft. So, I think if you go back 2 years ago, we were unlucky and should have been in the 8. Last year, I think everything went wrong for us in terms of coaching, injuries, everything. And it just wasn't going to be a good year for us. But we're starting from fresh this year, and if all the players stay sound, we've got a very good, and we've got big improvements to it in terms of the quality with the 3 players we've brought in, and plus young Draper. Yeah, there's a lot going for us this year, and as long as the injury gods can stay away from us and let us have a good year in terms of injuries, I reckon there's no reason why we shouldn't comfortably get into the 8.
I think there's a mental element to it too, Macca, with, I think obviously we had the whole Keys point situation the year before, and a lot of scribes were pumping us up and saying, we're going to go play finals the following year. And it'd be hard for the boys not to sort of believe in that a bit and feel like it's their destiny to play finals and to keep improving on that trajectory we were. And so I think that round one loss to the Gold Coast and then the following, especially that Geelong game the following week, probably made the boys panic a fair bit and think, what's going on here? And we didn't know quite how to adjust. And, the season basically got away from us before it even started. So I think that expectations, I think that they've done a great job in terms of sort of changing the narrative about what they're focusing on this season and not thinking too far ahead, because I think we went into panic mode as soon as things started going wrong last year and players dropped form and coaches made poor decisions, and we lost the plot a bit there. So look, it could be a lesson learned. I mean, Melbourne made a prelim in 2018 and then finished bottom 2 or 3 the following year and then rebounded again. So sometimes that it just happens. You think you're on the up, then you have a shocking year, but then you go back to the sort of the trajectory you were on before. So hopefully that's the case with us, but we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan on mantras and narratives, and this whole changing course from embracing the expectations in 24 to, we're just focusing on round one. I feel sometimes like Matthew Nicks is a very definitive person. I don't feel like there's a lot of flexibility in his thinking, and I feel like he needs to have these little things that he can stick on the whiteboard, and that's how we're going to think, and that's how we're going to approach this. And I feel like sometimes that comes through in the way he puts his game plan in place. I would much prefer if they just concentrated on developing a strong game plan and letting the results speak for themselves, rather than putting up this construct about, we're only going to focus on round one. Well, of course you're focusing on round one. You can't look any further, but that's not really the point. There's no doubt that there are expectations on the side. I think Matthew is trying to deflect that a little bit for his own benefit, because there are definitely expectations on Matthew Nicks this year. I don't think there's any commentator in football that doesn't think that the Crows have got a squad that is worthy of a final 8 spot. It will be, I put up a whole bunch of stats about Nixie and his career to date in terms of where he sits. He's 94th out of all coaches that have coached over 100 games in terms of his win-loss record. In terms of comparison to other Crows coaches, he's not even close. The time is now for Matthew, and whether he wants to forget about expectations or not. As you said earlier, Mac, there is no more excuses for Matthew Nicks. He's got the tools, he's got the players, he's got more experience in them, all the rest of it. He's got support around him. He needs to make every post a winner. And I think there should be expectations on this Crows team. And I think the players should be expecting things of themselves. They all underperformed last year, players and coaches. But the players need to take ownership of that. And they should have expectations to be making finals this year. They should be playing to make finals this year.
Yeah, I totally agree. 100%. And they should be believing in themselves that they can do that. And I know that what you said about Matthew Nicks is pretty correct. But I think the Davis was brought in for a reason, and I think he's really brought in to manage Nicks, quite frankly.
Certainly to give him guidance, I think.
Yeah, but I think it's, in some ways, it's a big criticism of Nicks that it was necessary to bring Davis in, and I think that some of the selections and some of the things that Nicks has done within games justified it because, within the number of years that he's been there with Adelaide now, some of those things he shouldn't be doing. So, I think that. I like the fact that Davis is there, that he'll actually, when Nixie's been talking about the future, this guy's going to help guide him as well. And I'm sure that one thing he'll be doing too, and is talking about positivity and belief and ambition and all those type of things, rather than hoping that we can win games.
Yeah, I'm all for longevity. I think that there's been many cases in AFL history where coaches have been moved on far too quickly. I think you do need to be able to evolve a squad, and I do think that your success is somewhat dictated by the position that your squad's in when you take it over. For example, Chris Scott just walked in and had a flag-winning squad, whereas a bloke like Chris Fagan had to build from the ground up. So it takes different amounts of time. So I wouldn't say I'm comfortable, but I'm not opposed to the fact that they've given Matthew another season to the end of 2026, but I don't think that means he gets until the end of 2026. I think he's got to show something, Mac. He's got to show that he's capable of taking the resources at his disposal and building something that is going to become a force. Because if he can't do it this season, then we can't waste any more time waiting for him to learn or develop as a coach or whatever, because that squad is going to mature while we're waiting for Matthew to pick up. So he either has spent the off season thinking about what he needs to do and he can put it in place, or he'll be gone by the bye.
Well, no, he's had 3 ready-made players, established players, good players, injected into his team, on top of the natural improvement of the younger players who played a couple more seasons, season by season, are getting experience. So, like, all those players should be better. So, in terms of his squad, he's been given a pretty good squad, and one that's got a bit of depth, because there's going to be players that played regularly last year that probably won't be struggling to get a game. So it's I think he's been given a very good squad, and if he doesn't make the 8 with it this year, unless there's some horrific run of injuries where he can't fill the good side, but given just a normal type of season, I think it's on him that he must make the 8, and if he didn't, I wouldn't let him be the coach for 2026. I'd pay him out and get rid of him.
And I think that's probably my point, that whether he wants to say there's expectations or not, there most definitely is. There's most definitely expectations on this season. So it'll be interesting to see how he coaches whether he coaches with a free mind and lets results speak for themselves, or whether he crutches on certain players and puts in a defensive game plan that minimises, score blowouts and all the rest of it, because that it'll become evident very quickly if he's coaching to save his job or whether he's coaching to develop a premiership winning side.
Your thoughts, big man?
Yeah, I mean, one thing I'd like to add to that, because I agree with what you're saying, is that I'd love to see Nixie and the selection committee as a whole, just back the kids a bit more. I think there was a few times last year where there were players playing really good footy in the SANFL, and we just seemed to delay them getting into the side by weeks. Guys like Nankervis, God, I'm trying to think of the others. There was other
Dowling.
players at the time. Dowling was another.
Dowling, Taylor.
Taylor's one of my favourites. Oscar Ryan was really unlucky not to play last year as well. So there were guys where I was just thinking to myself, just back him in Nixie, because they will perform when they come in, and they did. We certainly weren't worse off for those guys coming to the team. In fact, I think we played better footy. So, when some of those more established players are out of form, or we've got injured players who are sort of not quite 100%, I would love Nixie just to say, you know what, Oscar Ryan, you come in the team, or Zach Taylor, you come in the team, instead of waiting weeks on end for that to happen, because they proved that they're up to the standard when they did actually play.
100%. We talked about trust a lot, didn't we, last season, Mac, and the fact that he didn't trust the young kids. And it's a real obvious trait of his. And, if blokes like Lockie Murphy keep getting a run, nothing against Lockie Murphy. He tries hard, he's in and under, whatever. He's not in our best 23. He doesn't need to be anywhere near our best 23. He doesn't need to be anywhere near our leadership group. I think our squad has evolved past Lockie Murphy being in our best 23. And it frightens me when I see him picked in first 23s in practice games and all the rest of it. And I hope it's just for positioning purposes or whatnot. But if he's in our first round squad, there is something wrong. There is something wrong.
Look, to be fair to Murphy, he actually had he actually had a ripping game playing as a midfielder actually on Friday in the the second half of the game.
So what was that? Well, in the SAFL.
Yeah, look, I thought it was an interesting thing, because I expected. I was actually surprised Zach Taylor didn't get that midfield time. I thought it was because I know what they're trying to do with Zach, and try to make him multi-dimensional and give him forward time so he could work on that. But he didn't actually attend a single centre bounce on Friday, whereas Murphy actually got the most for all our players in those last three quarters. So I thought that was a bit strange, because obviously if Murphy's to play in the AFL team, he's not going to be playing midfield.
Yeah.
He's going to be playing as a forward, and Taylor's actually a natural midfielder who can kick a goal or two up forward as well. So I thought that was strange. I don't quite know what they're trying to do there. I think Murphy actually played a really good game, but obviously he was playing in a position that, he wasn't a midfielder growing up. So I'm not surprised he played well, and he should play well, against that standard of opposition. But I thought that was an odd one, because I'd rather see Zach in the middle if anyone's going to play in there.
Well, and let's face it, as you mentioned earlier, Port's midfield didn't really turn up. And the point that you make with regards to the minutes that he got when we have a kid like Zach Taylor in the wings, Jad in the chat also points out that, Murphy played mids and Pedler played at half forward all game. They're the sorts of things that bother me when we've got lads that need time. It's a practice game. Murphy is not best 23, but I don't know whose the photos are of, Mac, but they're pretty effective.
Well, I think there's a goat involved there somewhere, but it's a strange situation.
Anyway,
I just cannot believe that. And look, I'm glad Big Man brought up that point about Murphy playing in the centre, because I reckon he was just about at everybody said about its attendant. And the guys that should have been, Yep, and the guys that should have been there didn't get a look in. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. That makes no sense.
We actually played Jay Boyle, who's, to be fair, one of our better top ups. He's actually a really good sample player, but he actually got quite a few centre bounces. But yeah, Taylor and some of the others couldn't get in there, which is just a bit strange. This time of year, I thought you'd want to expose them as much as possible. But look, these things happen. I'm sure they have their reasons, but we can question them.
Yeah, we can, and we will.
My point is that if you're going to put anybody on a half forward flank, you're going to put the Sandford player on there and give the guys that want to play in midfield and are capable of playing midfield and giving them the opportunity. And Murphy's a bloody half forward flanker, and he's never been a midfielder.
Every day of the week.
Yeah, and sure, he got quite a bit of the ball because he's playing at B grade level, playing midfield, but you just get this horrible feeling that it's still, whether it's the goat pictures or whatever it is, that Nick's has got this bloody bias towards him.
And on that note, goat pictures, Macca, we've hit the 2-hour mark now. Mac, it's first episode. We had a couple of guests. It's been a bit loose. We got a bit of a glitchy start. I'm willing to make allowances, but I'm just firing a warning shot over the bow right now. Rap shows are going to be an hour. Rap shows are going to be an hour this year. They're not going to be 2-hour bloody yab fests. They're going to be an hour. A lot of the stats stuff we're gonna rip out and move it to the coach's box on Tuesday nights. But so it's lovely to be back. It's lovely to have this extended chat. It's great to see everyone on YouTube and on Discord and everywhere else. And hopefully, that support continues throughout the course of the season. But we probably need to leave it there. And we look forward to Brisbane next week. Now, that's on Thursday, isn't it? The Brisbane game?
And we're playing Brisbane, yeah.
Yeah, Brisbane on the Thursday, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll look forward to that on the Thursday. As I said, we've got a Sid Draper interview coming up. It'll probably drop Wednesday, I think. I'm talking to him on Tuesday. Lots of other stuff coming on through the course of the next couple of weeks as we head towards the season opener in the middle of March. Big man, it's been an absolute pleasure, mate, and we're going to have to get you to download and join our Discord because I'd love to have you on again. It's been a fantastic chat that we've been able to have with you, and your insight into pre-season has been invaluable. Thanks, mate.
No worries, Feenix. I mean, I love talking footy as much as I can, and thanks so much for inviting me. And by the way, Macca, sorry, I think I cut you off a few times. Obviously, with the stream and everything, the timing can go a bit astray sometimes. But it's been great. I really appreciate the chat, and thanks for having me on.
And awesome. I must say, from my point of view, no worries about that because I thoroughly enjoyed chatting with you, mate. You know your footy backwards, forwards, and frontwards, backwards, everything. It was really good. I really enjoyed it. Very
good. Like I said, we're going to have to have a chat. We're going to have a chat, big man, because this is not going to be your one and only appearance on Crowcast if I can have anything to do with it. I was hoping that our debutant would come on tonight, Macca, but I reckon he's out at Grown-Up Pub getting pissed or something. A cricket final today, and he said to me, I don't know whether I'm going to be able to make it. I said, well, don't worry about it. It's only pre-season. So he will be around soon enough. But we will finish up there. We'll be back, obviously, with our weekend wrap next Sunday night at the same time and every Sunday night from now until we win the grand final. So thanks everyone for joining us. Thanks everyone for joining us, and have a good week, and we will see you next week. Good night, everyone.
Good night, all.